This episode is brought to you by CoolStuffInc.com, the #1 seller of games and gaming accessories. And GatheringMagic.com, the #1 resource for Magic the Gathering news and articles.
Hi, it's Ching Sung again, and I'm here to bring you a video on UW Delver and how the deck plays from both ahead and behind, how its cards work in those contexts, and what the deck is capable of and what the deck has trouble with. Last week I focused on card volume because I wanted to showcase that in fact Delver can just play a long game like a control deck, and if you're playing a more aggressive deck that doesn't have the card advantage ability and the ability to keep up with Delver's card volume in that way, you need to realize that Delver has that ability. Which means you can't treat it like just playing a normal sort of tempo deck where you might be able to run them out of gas, because you will run out of gas before Delver. You need to treat Delver as having about as much card advantage and card volume potential as a control list that you would be playing against, and so therefore you need to take that into consideration when you're playing against the deck. Today I want to talk a little bit more about different board positions where it's a little bit more interactive and what's going on with Delver in those situations. This match is round 1 of an 8-man against red-black zombies, and of course I don't know that yet, but I've just kept a hand with turn 1 Delver into Ponder into Blade Splicer, and that seems like a reasonably good opening. So his turn 1 Diregraph Ghoul identifies him as zombies here, and I reveal Restoration Angel off of the draw. So I reflexively play a Plains here. This is actually a mistake, because there's nothing. I'm going to Ponder this turn, and there's absolutely nothing that I will ever play with a single white mana. However, there is stuff that I'll play for a single blue mana. It ends up not making a huge difference. It ends up costing me 2 life, because what I'm seeing here is a Gitaxian Probe, a Vapor Snag, and a Restoration Angel. But if this had been a Ponder, it would have been very different, because I wouldn't have been able to cast the Ponder because I already played my Plains. So just to note here, this land drop is a mistake. Once again, it ends up not really affecting this game, but I really should have played the island, because I can just play the Plains and play the Blade Splicer next turn, and that's perfectly fine. I have this reflex when I'm playing lands just to get all my colors into play so that I can cast as many of my spells as possible, but, you know, like, thinking about your land drops is important, and making the wrong land drop will cost you games. So the plan, of course, is to Gitaxian Probe into Restoration Angel and then flip off a Vapor Snag next turn. So I play the Gitaxian Probe, and I see here 2 Killing Waves, a Doomblade, 2 lands, and a Falconwrath Noble. Falconwrath Aristocrat. It's worth noting here that the Falconwrath Aristocrat is going to at least take a little while to get online, because I have a Vapor Snag coming up, and additional Vapor Snags or Snapcaster Mages are just going to make this card pretty mediocre. It's also worth noting that he has 2 Killing Waves, the second of which is probably dead. I'm going to assume that he kept a hand with 1 Killing Wave and drew a second Killing Wave on his first draw step, which is really awkward, but it's something that happens on occasion. But it's also worth noting this is a really slow hand from zombies, and so I can definitely get out in front of it. So his second turn is Dragon Skull Summit, and he just Doomblades my Delver of Secrets immediately. And then gets in for 2. And then I'm just going to play a land and play Blade Splicer. Alright, so here's worth noting a point that you have as an opposing player against a deck like Delver that plays with Gitaxian Probe. Be careful to remember what your opponent saw. Alright? I did not see this Blackleaf Cliffs when I Gitaxian Probed. I saw the Dragon Skull Summit. Alright. The second land I saw was a Swamp. So I already know that he has a Swamp, a Falconwrath Aristocrat, and 2 Killing Waves in his hand. And I still know 4 of the 5 cards in his hand. If he played the Swamp and hid the Blackleaf Cliffs, he'd still have 3 lands in play, but I would only know 3 of the cards in his hand, and so thus I'd have a little bit more mystery and considerations as to what exactly he was holding. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. Remember what your opponent saw off of cards like Gitaxian Probe, so that you can play accordingly. Even if you draw a land like Blackleaf Cliffs, unless you have a reason to play it, I would try to hold it. Now, in this case, he does sort of have a reason, because he has an Aristocrat on turn 4. But even so, I'm still not certain that I would have played the Black Leaves Cliffs here. I might have hidden that for information. So he's going to play a Mortar Pod here, and this Mortar Pod gives me perfect information, because now I know all 4 cards in his hand. And that's actually something that's really useful to have with Delver. So he also passes the turn without immediately killing my Blade Splicer. This is also a decision I disagree with, in light of the fact that this Mortar Pod token is almost certainly killing the Blade Splicer anyway, and doing so on his turn, or during my upkeep or whatever, like basically before I get to play my 4th land, plays around Restoration Angel, since he clearly doesn't have an instant speed removal spell for 1 mana. So that's all I really wanted to talk about. You'll see how this decision comes back to haunt him, because I'm able to make a couple tokens off of the Blade Splicer, and those tokens really end up hurting him. I think really just getting rid of this Blade Splicer is a good usage of the Mortar Pod at this point. So now I play my 4th land, and I'm obviously just going to pass with the Mortar Pod on the table. I really feel no need to really do anything special in this situation, because I'm ahead, and I'm playing defensively. So I could get in with the Golem token, but once again, there's really no reason to it. All it does is it forces the sack Blade Splicer Restoration Angel line, and I really don't see any reason to force the issue at this point, especially when I know an Aristocrat is coming next turn. So he plays the Swamp I know he has, and then obviously Falconwrath Aristocrat comes down. So what's going to happen here is I'm just going to continue to use the Golem token to stop his Diregraph Ghoul from attacking, and I'm just going to Vapor Snag the Aristocrat to buy myself a turn. Because I already have this 5th land, next turn I can Restoration Angel while threatening Vapor Snag as well, and so it's perfectly reasonable. All I'm just going to do is buy a turn here to buy a land drop. And so once again here, he again has the opportunity to Mortar Pod my Blade Splicer, but chooses not to. So now I get in with the Golem token, because I have the Restoration Angel up, so there's no reason to do anything. And so he throws the Mortar Pod at my face, because he knows that I have the Restoration Angel, so there's really nothing he can do about it. So he attacks here. I think what he's trying to do here is draw the Restoration Angel, and maybe in the hopes of playing Killing Wave afterwards, but I don't really understand why he does this. Given that I don't know every card in his hand anymore, I'm a little wary at this point, so I just take the 2 because I'm at 15. And he plays the Geralf's Messenger. So once again, I have almost perfect information as to his hand. There's only 1 card I don't know. And I'm just going to assume that it's not a Tragic Slip, and then just go for the Restoration Angel here. Here I just make a big attack, because I know that there's no reason, once again, that I can't just leave up this Restoration Angel and this Vapor Snag and just utterly crush him development-wise. So you see what happens here is I've already managed to get pretty far ahead on the board. I have more power on the table than him, and I have defensive synergies where I can still defend myself with these 2 cards and alongside the Vapor Snag. And so Zombies as a deck at this point really has no way of defending against my Creature Assault, and is behind on the board. So I'm in a very strong position. You can see how I got there. These 2 Vapor Snags were absolutely crucial in controlling the Zombies player's development in terms of his board presence, and therefore making it so that it's difficult for him to maintain a strong board presence. So I thought he was casting Aristocrat when he tapped his lands. He's casting Killing Wave here, and this is literally just a death knell for him. this means that he's just absolutely dead if he casts Killing Wave for X equals 3. It's possible that what he was trying to do was kill some of my dudes and get a 4/3 messenger, so that he could better attack next turn. I still think it would have been better for him to attack for 5, first, and maybe draw out the Restoration Angel. That not only puts more resources on the board for me to lose to Killing Wave, but it also gives me less life to pay to maintain my board state and to help him gain an advantage. Now, I don't think it would have made a difference, but just to note that this Killing Wave I think is premature. I think he wanted his 4/3 messenger though, instead of he wanted to not pay life to lose any of his dudes, because if I Restoration Angel, I can block both of his dudes and actually kill the messenger once, and so it leaves me at 9, and it makes sure that his messenger dies. So I think he wanted his messenger to stick around, which is why he did this. Of course, I'm just going to Vapor Snag the messenger here, and then play Restoration Angel at the end of his turn on my Blade Splicer, which I'll keep, and that will be the death of him. So I keep 2 creatures. I keep the Restoration Angel and the Blade Splicer. The reason being is that I only know at this point in time, I know 3 of the 5 cards in his hand. I know that he has a second Killing Wave. I know he has a Falconwrath Aristocrat, and I know he has a Geralf's Messenger. So it is possible that he has something like Land Fume Spitter or Land Tragic Slip. And in the event of either of those, keeping the extra Restoration Angel allows me to ensure that I win the game. Essentially, if he has Land Fume Spitter or Land Tragic Slip, he can kill my Blade Splicer in response to my Restoration Angel, and thus what's going to happen is he's going to be able to get another dude down on the table, probably the Aristocrat, and so I need to be able to attack around a single creature to win the game. And so hence this will deal 6, and then he'll take 1 more. It's possible that I'll ponder into a Vapor Snag or a Snapcaster Mage for the win, but there's no way that I want to rely on that. And so obviously he has nothing, and so this Restoration Angel is just completely lethal. So you see, when Delver is in a position where it's ahead, it's got a substantial number of tools to use, primarily Vapor Snag, because we're in a metagame and time in Magic where creatures are such a big deal. Vapor Snag ends up being a real good way of controlling your opponent's development and just attempting to buy time. And this time is used in conjunction with things like Blade Splicer and Restoration Angel to just deal your opponent damage. Restoration Angel is a real good creature also because it serves defensive applications as well as offensive applications. Being a flash 3/4 flyer in conjunction with Blade Splicer allows you to create golem tokens defensively and also have a 3/4 flying body defensively. But as a attacker, Restoration Angel is a reasonably powerful card. So you can definitely get in with this stuff with the time that you're buying using Vapor Snag. So in a position where Delver's ahead, it's basically threatening to use Vapor Snag to cement that advantage by controlling your development and by setting you back turns by doing things like bouncing the Falconwrath Aristocrat and the Geralf's Messenger. Both of those things that I was doing were just developmentally controlling for the Zombies player, and he just was never able to really get on the board. And that's oftentimes what happens when Delver is ahead. It's why games against Delver, where Delver's ahead, feel so one-sided, because Delver's just playing all these spells that prevent you from ever really accomplishing anything, and then killing you while you're down, essentially kicking you while you're down. And that's what the deck does when it's ahead. Just be aware of that, and that's really how the deck wins. The primary tool to do so is Vapor Snag, so if you can avoid positions where Vapor Snag is really strong against you, you can often recover against Delver. And that's honestly why a lot of the control decks are better suited to recover against Delver than decks like Naya or whatever, because the control decks just don't have targets for Vapor Snag. The only real target is Lingering Souls, but there's so many friends that Lingering Souls brings that and you're just using the tokens to chump block anyway, that Vapor Snag accomplishes very little in that situation. Naya tends to be better off also because a lot of its creatures have comes into play abilities. So Vapor Snagging those creatures that comes into play abilities tends to just give you the ability again, which often is fine. And so that's the sort of situation that you end up in. So that's Delver playing from ahead. Let's talk about how Delver works from behind and some of the vulnerabilities that Delver possesses in that situation. And so the next game we'll look at is a game against Naya. And let's just go and look at it. Okay, so let's take a look at game 2. This is game 2. Also in the, I think it's in the same 8-man, the second round, against Nayapod. And I lost game 1 due to a stream of steady Blade Splicers and Restoration Angels and Huntmaster of the Fells. And I was just really unable to handle a steady stream of value creatures and lost the game to that. So I know I'm playing against Nayapod, and one of the things to be aware of in this matchup is that it's very difficult for Delver to attack on the ground in this matchup. Nayapod's Blade Splicers and Huntmaster of the Fells and the ability to rebuy them with Restoration Angel, along with like other random value creatures like Borderland Ranger, just gum up the ground really, really fast. So there's really very, very, very few opportunities for Delver to make profitable attacks on the ground. Especially if the Nayapod player has a decent hand. I mean, obviously, bad hand's bad hand, but with any reasonable draw, the Nayapod player is going to be able to come up the ground pretty fast. So Delver's game is going to be in the air. And also, it's worth it to note that this is my 7-card hand, which is pretty terrible, even though I'm on the play. I've got, like, 5 lands and a Mana Leak and a Gitaxian Probe. This hand doesn't do anything. So I'm going to mulligan this hand. And I'm going to get Vapor Snag, Oblivion Ring, Snapcaster, Delver, and 2 lands. This is a much, much better opening for this matchup, especially since I'm on the play, and I have this Delver of Secrets, so I can potentially play more aggressively and try to steal a game just being Delver. I keep this 6, but it's worth it to note that in this situation I'm already effectively down a card where I should be because I'm mulliganed. So I'm already starting from a little bit more of a disadvantageous position than I'm already in this matchup, because I don't have the extra card to work with, and he's on the draw, so he's in fact going to be up quite a few cards on me just based on the natural position. So I play turn 1 Delver. And sadly, he is turn 1 Birds of Paradise, which is not exactly the situation I want to be in. So I flip off a Vapor Snag here, which is actually really good for me. And in this situation, I have a decision to make. The problem with playing against Nayapod is that his deck has a ton of 3-drops. It's got Blade Splicer, it's got Borderland Ranger, and it's got Birthing Pod itself. So I make the decision here to Vapor Snag his Birds of Paradise to keep him off a 3-drop on turn 2, and hopefully this buys me an extra swing with Delver of Secrets. The idea being is that if he drops something like Birthing Pod on turn 2, or even a Blade Splicer, it also allows him to ramp to Restoration Angel on turn 3, and thereby attempt to halt my Delver of Secrets beats via that means. Birthing Pod has similar effects in the sense that it immediately starts his value chain, and so it gives me less time to work with the resources that I have. So I make this decision to Vapor Snag in the hopes that the tempo that I gain from this, hopefully I'm going to gain at least 1 attack, but hopefully I get 2 attacks with Delver of Secrets, and that may allow me to steal the game from underneath him. So this double Birds of Paradise that he has sadly ends up being really bad for me, because my hope is to use the Snapcaster Mage alongside these 2 Vapor Snags to attempt to control his development either via mana or just via the ability to bounce his creatures and to in general be annoying, and thereby get more attacks in with his Delver of Secrets and hopefully just kill him that way. The double birds is bad because it means that there's absolutely no way I can control his mana development by bouncing his birds. because he just has too much mana at this point. And it also means that I'm going to have trouble controlling his threat development because they'll provide him with a lot of mana to cast and recast his threats. So this ends up being just about the worst thing that could happen to me in this position, and I already know in this position I'm already very far behind. It looks like I'm not that far behind. I'm up 20 to 16. I still got 3 cards left. I've got some action, but really in this situation I'm very, very far behind. So we go to my turn. I draw Sphinx. I boarded in one of these in the sense that these matches do tend to go a little bit long, and if I can stick a Sphinx for an extended period of time while he doesn't have a Metamorph, I can just win the game on card value. So I boarded in one of these. I didn't go the full control board, but I did board this in because I do think it's a good card to have access to a singleton of. Ends up actually being pretty bad here because it just sits in my hand and rots. But, it's a risk you take with cards like that in matchups like these. I'm going to attack, and obviously he's not going to block because there's no reason for him to chump in this position. I really wanted a third land here, but there's really nothing that I could do about not drawing a third land. So he has land here, followed by Zealous Conscripts to take my Insectile Aberration and deal me 6. So once again, I could use the Vapor Snag on the Zealous Conscripts here, but I see no particular reason to do that because it just gives him another rebuy on the Zealous Conscripts, and so it doesn't accomplish too much. I would rather use this Vapor Snag in a position where it actually accomplishes more than it is right now. The main thing it does is prevent 3 damage to me, but at this point in time I don't think the 3 damage is going to be horribly valuable in a race. And if it does become valuable, I can do so in the future. So here we drop to 10. And then he has Wolfear Silverheart this turn. This card's actually really bad for Delver in general, because Delver has very few ways to handle this card. Pretty much the only way to actually handle this card consistently is to bounce the creature it's soul bonded with and dismember it. But Delver runs very few dismembers, so that ends up being a line of play that ends up being not that relevant in a lot of situations. The most common way you'll see this card handled by Delver is for you to Vapor Snag the soul bonded creature when Wolfear Silverheart is blocks or is blocked, and then finish it off with something like Gut Shot. That's a very common way that Delver handles this card. Or, bounce the soul bonded creature and gang block so that it dies. Either way, that's sort of how this card gets handled. But if you're careful with your Silverhearts as the Naya player, you can just sort of keep a Silverheart out of situations where that's going to be an issue. And the fact that it's just a big giant dude on the ground, and on the ground just ends up being problematic because it provides so much power so quickly. Given that I'm in a racing situation, there's absolutely no way I can take 7 from the Zealous Conscripts. And also, given that he is a Silverheart out, I would rather not bounce the Zealous Conscripts to give him a rebuy for some reason. So I'm just going to bounce the Silverheart here, and only take 3. So luckily here I draw the 3rd land. And Insectile Aberration gets in for 3. So I'm going to get hit by Zealous Conscripts. So he chooses to Borderland Ranger, which makes sense. It puts another threat on the table, and he still has 2 birds to chump block with, and now he has 4 mana up for Restoration Angel as well. So just getting more lands is good in this situation. And then he's going to play Huntmaster of the Fells for 2 more life. So as you can see, what I'm trying to do as Delver is I'm trying to delay his development long enough with things like Snapcaster Mage, Vapor Snag, and probably this O-Ring to win with Delver of Secrets through the air. That's my game plan in this situation, and it's often the game plan that Delver has when it falls behind early. If it falls behind early, frequently a fast flip Delver of Secrets and then just attempting to time walk you as much as possible with Snapcaster Mage, Vapor Snag, and Oblivion Ring is Delver's way of stealing games from underneath you. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So at this point in time, I'm using Snapcaster here, and I have two options here with the Vapor Snag. I can attempt to Vapor Snag Birds of Paradise to try to get things out of the way for my Delver of Secrets later, or I can just attempt to go to delay him some more. And since I'm trying to survive as well as win the game, I bounce the Wolf token here. Bouncing the Huntmaster of the Fells just allows him to replay it next turn for 2 more life and another Wolf token, so there's really no reason to do that. And if I'm going to bounce one of his creatures, the Wolf token's the one that accomplishes me the most, because it doesn't have a comes into play trigger that he gets to rebuy at some point. The second most viable creature to bounce is probably the Borderland Ranger, because although it gives him a land and he has a township to utilize it, there's still going to be some amount of time before that really comes into play. So I think bouncing the Wolf or the Borderland Ranger here is probably the best thing to do. Zealous Conscripts is just terrible in this situation because he gives him an extra attacker. So now the awkward thing is now I have to play a spell to prevent the Huntmaster from flipping, otherwise the Huntmaster just flat out kills my Delver and it's GG. So I have to play the O-Ring. Now the problem here is that with playing the O-Ring, I have a few options. Once again, I can go after a Birds of Paradise to hopefully get my Insectile Aberration in again. I mean, obviously it's getting in this turn, but I need to get it in next turn as well. If I get it in on these next 2 turns in addition to this Vapor Snag, I win because he's at exactly 7. Well, hopefully I win. But the problem with O-Ringing a bird is he can just pass the turn, flip the Huntmaster, kill a dude, and then play 2 spells, and then reflip the Huntmaster, giving him 2 more life. And so therefore, I might not actually just win the game on the spot. That does give me time to play the Snapcaster Vapor Snag, but there's just a lot of risks involved in that situation, and it's possible that just doesn't go well. The safer play here is, I think the safer play is just going to be to flat out O-Ring the Huntmaster and just get rid of it. Because no matter what next turn, he can attack. He can leave himself vulnerable as well if he townships, or there's a bunch of things that he can do. So I'm not really sure what's going on as far as what he can do is concerned. He just attacks here. There's a potential threat of township, but if he townships, he leaves only 2 Birds of Paradise back, and he'll hit me for half my life total. But he leaves himself vulnerable to something like Snapcaster Vapor Snag plus Vapor Snag or something of that nature, getting his blockers out of the way, and then me killing him with Insectile Aberration. So what he does here is just allows me to trade off his Borderland Ranger, which I'm fine with, and then he just passes the turn. Him passing the turn here clearly indicates he has Restoration Angel, but there's really not much I can do about it. So at this point in time, I'm already pretty sure I've lost this game. I draw land, and I attack in the hopes that potentially he makes a mistake. Because if he makes a mistake, I'm dead. But he does the correct play, which is block with the Birds of Paradise and then play Restoration Angel to blink the bird. In this situation, I just immediately scoop because I know that I'm dead. I can actually probably survive another turn. Oh, actually, wait, no, I can't. Yeah, in this situation, I just scoop because I'm immediately dead. I can Snapcaster and Vapor Snag something, probably the Restoration Angel during the attack. But if he just townships during the attack, there's really nothing I can do to survive. Because he's going to have 2 4-power creatures in the Zealous Conscripts and the Restoration Angel, and then he's going to have 2 Birds of Paradise. So there's really just very little I can do to survive. Every single line of play that I have has an answer. He has an answer for. So I just scooped here because the match is over. The thing with Delver to remember is when Delver is playing from behind, Delver is going to attempt to try to buy time with cards like Vapor Snag and Snapcaster Mage, and attempt to basically kill you with the time it buys. Its attackers in this situation primarily are Delver of Secrets, Insectile Aberration, and Restoration Angel. Those are the 2 real ways it's going to kill you. If Delver has swords, it often will use swords in the same capacity to try to sneak in underneath whatever defenses you're mounting. in those situations, what you need to do is you need to be able to survive Delver's like tricky plays, and essentially take the game afterwards just by outlasting them. The awkward thing with Delver is that a lot of times the lines that it's taking when it's behind and trying to catch up and desperately trying to time walk you and steal a game look in some respects very similar to the lines it's taking when it's playing a control game and just trying to outcard you. The reason is because a lot of the times it's using the same tools. It's using Vapor Snag, it's using Restoration Angel, it's using Snapcaster Mage. It's just using them in different ways. So you've got to be very careful to not only look at what Delver is playing, but how Delver is playing it. And that's very revealing of the Delver player's plan in that particular situation, and in general revealing of the Delver player's particular position. So, as you can see, Delver has vulnerabilities. Its primary vulnerability is that when it's behind, it has a very linear game plan that is just very, very predictable and operates in a very specific way that doesn't actually help Delver get ahead that doesn't help Delver catch up in the long game. Essentially, Delver's only real recourse when it falls behind is to fall back on this Vapor Snag Snapcaster Mage play to try to basically stave off its loss, and hopefully long enough for it to steal a win in the interim. But the problem is that if you can't stave off that loss long enough, if you just keep on delaying and delaying but don't actually accomplish anything, but don't actually accomplish the kill in that time period, your opponent's superior cards are just going to bury you. And that's really Delver's primary vulnerability, lies in the fact that if you get ahead of Delver, it's very difficult for the deck to catch up, because the only recourse it really has is this Vapor Snag play. So if you can stop that Vapor Snag play, or you can play creatures that are strong against that Vapor Snag play, like Zealous Conscripts, like Borderland Ranger, like Huntmaster of the Fells, there's just very few ways for Delver to work around that stuff. So I hope this is an interesting look at what Delver's doing and how it does it. And hopefully it gives you a better understanding of the deck so that when you play against it, you can make better decisions and hopefully improve your win percentage against the deck. Alright? Well, that's all for this week. Next week I may be writing an article, or I may be doing another video. I don't actually know. So we'll see when the time comes. Alright? So I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'll see you guys next week.